Hi, everybody. It's Susan, and I'm back from a bit of an absence. I've been under the weather for the last couple of weeks, and I've just basically decided to lay low and do what I had to do rather than add on anything to my plate. And so here I am, though, one day late to talk about the Capricorn ingress, or the sun's ingress into Capricorn, which we also call the solstice of Capricorn, or the winter solstice in the northern hemisphere and the summer solstice in the southern hemisphere. And this is a really important part of what we use in astrology, in Western astrology, what's called Western astrology, but which actually comes from ancient Babylon and ancient Greek um, techniques, is the movement of the sun over the Tropic of Cancer to the Tropic of Cancer in the north, which is our summer solstice, or to the Tropic of Capricorn in the south, which is the winter solstice. And in between, of course, we have the equinoxes, and the equinoxes are when the sun is crossing into either Aries or Libra, and that's when the sun crosses the equator on its way north or south. So this is a key time of measuring time, and this is how the ancients always measured time. And when we look with our eyeballs out the window, we can see that there is a shift in the energy. We can see the light changing in these couple of days around the time of the solstice. In fact, if we take the story, the mythological birth of Christ around Christmas, the Christ is risen, or the Christ story of birth is actually with reference to the sun. And then that story got moved to Easter somewhere along the line, so that the sun ended up 3 days in the tomb, 3 days without light, which is now. We've got this winter period between roughly the 21st and the 24th of December, and it can vary between sort of a day before or after that each year. But this year it was on the 21st of December, where the sun seems to appear still in the sky, and it's very low on the horizon. So it's not available to us in the same way that it is in the rest of the year, where we can benefit from the height of the sun and feel the warmth and grow things. So this is a very much an internal symbol of retreating, and sometimes the symbol is death and rebirth, as it is with the story of Christ. And we come back to the rising sun, or the sun rising in its strength, from about the 24th or 25th of December. And so that phenomenon happens every year. It doesn't have to be a religious phenomenon, it just happens to have been taken on by one. It was always very much a pagan ritual time of the year, because of that notion of the sun being our savior in the way it keeps us alive. And this light is more than just light. This is the life force of the entire galaxy that we live in. Without the sun, we don't live. And so we're honoring that, and we're honoring that solar fire inside ourselves. And that in the Vedic tradition is known as Agni. So the sun that's on the outside is represented inside us as well. We call that metabolism in Western medical parlance, but that Agni is the life force in us as well. It's the thing that brings us warmth in our body, regulates our digestion, and gets things moving in the cells. So this is a time of the year where it's always a really good opportunity to slow down. Often we don't. Many people speed up at this time, rushing from one store to another, or one family party to another, or friends and other gatherings. And it would be a really good time to slow down and take an opportunity to curl up and retreat into oneself and try and understand where we are. It's a good time to take stock of the past year. And you can also take stock in such a way that you look back at the previous year's event, where you're looking at, for example, the solstice, the Capricorn solstice of 2023, and see what's changed in the meantime. And if you did make some kind of, I don't know, a sense of having an idea for the year ahead, or a sense of goals that you wanted to achieve, just reflect on what manifested and what didn't. And the fact that something didn't manifest can actually be a blessing. So notice that as well. Notice where the things that didn't manifest were actually better off for not manifesting, or the fact that you didn't manifest at the time that you would have wanted, perhaps there was a delay, or perhaps you're still in that phase of delay, it's actually going to improve whatever it was that you were hoping for. So why didn't something manifest? And what didn't manifest if there wasn't anything? Or what did manifest? And why did that manifest? It's good to look at those things, try and have a sense and use this time that you can be more clear. You can clean your slate and begin again, let go of the things that are no longer relevant for you at this time, and develop the things that become really relevant. And some things might just need to be tweaked and revised going forward, or some things might need to be set aside for a moment in time. And especially at this moment, and we'll look at that in the next segment when I look at the Jupiter square Saturn for each sign. We'll look at things that might still be ongoing, but not ready yet, or not yet underway. And so this is very much the flavor of this ingress with Capricorn, and of course the Capricorn rising at the time of the solar ingress is also squaring the nodes. And remember that the sun is the exalted ruler of Aries, and it's squaring its nodal axis, the lunar nodal axis. And so this is something that suggests that there's a responsibility here towards the way that we show up in the world, our individual desires and needs, also how we show up in terms of our action, because Aries is about Mars. It's about action, the actions that we take, and whether those are appropriate or not. We can always learn more from the way that we analyze our ambitions and goals, and Capricorn represents very much our sense of goals and ambitions and the legacy that we want to leave. And so wherever Capricorn is in your chart, wherever Aries is in your chart, this is a focal point for you to reflect on. And the ruler of the North Node and the exaltation ruler of Capricorn is Mars. And Mars is retrograde at this time. It's in a trine to the North Node that's been ongoing for the last few weeks. And that retrogradation of Mars also has this message of slowing down and not really being able to fulfill things in the way that we had initially wanted, or that things require some kind of reflection and reanalysis until we can move forward with that. Now that's going to be, I won't say resolved, but the retrogradation will stop on the 24th of February when Mars moves into 17 degrees of Cancer in February, and then stations direct to move back out of Cancer by the 18th of April. So we're looking ahead. Of course, this is the ingress is a seasonal ingress. So we're looking ahead to almost 90 days. It's 88 and a half days this year, but almost 90 days of this message holding some kind of validity. And so if we look to the third week of March, we're going to start to find the energy shifting again. And then we get the equinox, the Aries equinox that comes in around the 20th, 21st of March. And that's where the Mars energy is going to start to clarify in terms of what was going on for you in October. Now, we're, of course, going forward from December, but we're still also contemplating what was relevant for us the last year and a half as the nodal axis has been moving through Aries. So Mars is also feeding into that. What I didn't accomplish, what I wanted to do, what was my major goal, but I had to backtrack the things that didn't quite pan out. Maybe there's a reflection, and I did a video about the Mars retrograde. You can find that for more information specifically on that. But just with regards to this moment in time, that's kind of a birth moment or an event starting date for the next 3 months, we're looking at something that is an ambition that might be thwarted, and in many ways thwarted, because not only the retrogradation, but also the need for us to reflect on things in a way that actually is more appropriate to what we've perhaps been able to undergo. We also have Jupiter retrograde, and that Jupiter retrogradation is in a square to Saturn. I'm going to speak to more about that as well, because this holds pretty much the whole month of December and a couple of weeks into January. It's a very powerful square. It's a big theme for the many months to come. And I'll look sign by sign at what that represents for all of us. But the Jupiter squaring Saturn is also in a T-square with the moon, and we could even give it a mutable grand cross if we add in the Mercury, which is approaching. And so this square, we'll just stick with the T-square here, is about the thwarted ambitions again. It's the Jupiter squaring the moon can often be a little bit over ambitious. maybe not quite clear. When Jupiter squaring Saturn is also part of that reflection of what is maybe what did you bite off that you couldn't chew? What was impractical, maybe overly optimistic. And this can cause things to be delayed. It doesn't mean that it's not going to happen, but that at this time of the year, and certainly up until February, because Jupiter also will station direct in February on the 4th, there will be a shift in energy already in February, and then that prepares us for the shift in energy that comes in March with the eclipses, which are going to bring some more challenges in terms of big shifts in energy. So we're looking at a time where, with this kind of thwarted ambition or thwarted maybe emotional desire, we have to be a little bit more reserved or serious. We need to be in a place of responsibility, which is a very Capricorn word, integrity and responsibility, very much about the Leo Capricorn, by the way. So that's also with Mars in Leo. What is not in integrity? What do I need to take more responsibility for? Doesn't mean you're necessarily doing something illegal. It doesn't mean that something is necessarily bad. It just means that you might be letting things slide in one or another area, and that you really need to pull up your socks and do something to recover that, to resolve that, especially before too long, because by February, things are going to start to move forward, and whatever you're setting up in place now is going to move forward. So it better be what you want. With that Saturn also in a square to Mercury, we might also feel that we're not able to be very clear about what we want. Mercury in Sagittarius, Jupiter in Gemini in opposition here, which has been in opposition for a few weeks, is at least a mutual reception, but they're both unhappy. They're both in a place that they don't do well. Mercury is too very much scattered when it's in Sagittarius, and Jupiter as well wants to know all the nitty-gritty details, and it overlooks the important, maybe more philosophical picture. What's the big picture? Well, I'm not so sure because I'm trying to go after all these details. And then Mercury, which is all about the details, and which, by the way, rules that moon, is thinking in a way that might be a little bit too optimistic, or a little bit too, taking on more than it can handle. So we're actually in a good position right now to have that Saturn squaring. That opposition to the moon slows us down, makes us a little more serious, a little maybe more committed as well to what it is that we realize needs to change. And this is, of course, a collective energy. This is not something that's strictly speaking individual, unless you have these points in your chart. I'm not going to go through sign by sign. That's something that this is more of a collective story. Otherwise, this is just a standard transit chart. This ingress, and this tropical ingress is something that does affect us collectively. And here we also see that with the moon represented very strongly here, representing people, representing the populace, representing all of us in opposition to Saturn. And so there's something that we're all looking at that seems unavailable, seems perhaps unjust, unfair. That's also part of the story of the Jupiter and the Sagittarian energy, Jupiter in Gemini, Sagittarius, where we find Mercury. There can be just a generalized feeling of disgruntlement or disappointment or distrust, or a feeling of things not being fair, not being okay. We do have a very lovely trine, though, from Jupiter, from Venus rather, to Jupiter, which is retrograding. They had an exact moment of trine just a couple of days before the equinox, and that's very uplifting. And yet we're still dealing with a retrograde Jupiter. It's almost like a promise that has to be kept. It's a promise we think we're going to get this thing, it's going to come, but it's not really in its right condition now. It's not really in the shape that we need it to be in. And so this is the very wintry message. Sorry for those of you in the southern hemisphere where it's summertime, but the very wintry message of Capricorn is to plan ahead, to hunker down, to come inside, and to really focus on what is necessary. What are the things that we must do? What are the things that are imperatives? And some of those will require saying no to things that we thought we should say yes to, or at the very least temporarily. So this is the flavor of the next 3 months. there is this, again, background energy. This is not something that I consider to be dominant over ongoing transits. It's certainly not as strong an impact as, for example, eclipses or other major powerful attributes, but it's just something to bear in mind. It's a kind of a feeling, the quality of the next 3 months, the quality of the season ahead. And we also have, of course, a retrograde Mars still in its opposition to Pluto, and that builds, in fact, in strength as Pluto moves forward and Mars moves backwards to 1 degree. And once we get to that point, it'll be the 3rd of January. So we're really only a couple of weeks out of the exact opposition. It's very, very meaningful and very tight even now. So the square from Jupiter to Saturn, the opposition from Mars to Pluto are ongoing things. And those will hold, let's say, for this, let's say, month around the beginning of this season. It's a theme also of struggle, and the struggle that is not entirely met face on, because we've already had this opposition from Mars moving direct from the end of Cancer, opposing Pluto moving direct at the end of Capricorn. And so now the flavor of that has changed, not just because the signs have changed, because Pluto's now in Aquarius finally, but also because Mars is in Leo and retrograde. So the energy is different. There's a struggle that's different, and the opposition may take on a feeling of resentment and frustration rather than simple overt violence. And it doesn't mean that globally we can't see something that actually becomes overtly violent. That's entirely the potential is very strong this year. I do feel. I do think there is a very strong potential, for example, for war with Iran, which the United States has been setting up basically for the better part of 25 years or more, 30 even. And so I think this is the peak time. And I'm going to do a video about this, and I'm trying to stay away from my addiction to global politics, but I will do a video on the Saturn-Neptune conjunction and how that refers back to what's going on in the Middle East. I know a lot of people point to Russia and how that affects Russia. Certainly that's a part of Russia's history. But I see that the last cycle of Saturn-Neptune, which started in Capricorn in 1989, is coming to a peak with what we see in the Middle East. And there's a new cycle with Saturn-Neptune that is beginning, that affects NATO, the massive stellium, 10th house stellium in Aries in the NATO chart, and it certainly affects the world, especially in the region of the Middle East. So we'll have another look at that, but just keep that kind of thing in mind, because in the background to our lives, there are major societal changes and maybe what we could call global changes in power structure. And this is part of the Mars in opposition to Pluto. That's not every Mars opposite Pluto, but it's certainly in this moment, especially because Mars is retrograding, going back and forth over these points. And we will have the final understanding of what this Mars opposite Pluto cycle will represent only on the 26th of April. So that's well into the next season and after the eclipse season as well. So a lot of dust has to settle before we see these things. So all this to say, these are collective energies. These are things that just give us a background flavor to the moment. And what we can do with that will depend on where we sit in our own lives and how that's moving through our own lives. But again, I'm going to give more emphasis to the Jupiter squaring Saturn. And so I'd like to look at that chart now. And we're going to have a look at, where was it? There we go. We're going to have a look at that sign by sign. So as Jupiter is squaring Saturn, it happens exactly on the 24th of December, universal time. I always use universal time because of people being all over the world. And this is at 8 p.m. universal time. And this is something that you can, don't fuss about the day necessarily, because you can assume that that square has been active all through December and continues for a couple of weeks afterwards in its greatest impact. And if you do have something anywhere between sort of 12 and 16 degrees, especially of mutable signs, you will be strongly affected by this. The mutable signs are Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. So Pisces is where we find Saturn, and Gemini is where we find Jupiter, but those points will be very strong by opposition or square. For others, it'll be more fluid because there will be either a sextile or a trine, and some of you won't be really strongly affected. So it's something to bear in mind if you've got projects underway, for example, something that you want to engage in, and maybe for timing, it can give you a sense of where I need to just wait and slow things down, and where it might be a good time to go back over the plan and recover work that might have been started or really inspired in July and August, and then you move forward with the plans. So let's go sign by sign. I'm just going to shift this now hour by hour. So we're going to lose the exactitude. I just want to get back to Aries on the ascendant. And this will apply for Aries, Sun, Moon, and ascendant sign. And the sun is yourself. It's your consciousness. It's your way of showing up in the world, your sense of purpose. It can also represent your career, and it represents the males in your family, the masculine energy, including especially the father or father-like figures in your life. And so here, when it's the moon, for example, it represents your interior experience. It's your mind, your memory, your emotions, the way that you relate physically to life. So the moon represents your body as well. The moon represents the feminine energy in your life, females, but also especially the mother. And that's especially true if you have a night chart. And then, of course, the ascendant sign represents the outer directed activities in your life, how you reach out into life, the sort of filter that you use to look at life, and also the things that you engage in and the areas of life that you engage in. So sometimes people say, well, what's more accurate? And somehow the moon just fell off, fell out of favor. Very, very bizarrely, in just the last year or two, the moon suddenly becomes somehow irrelevant, although it's one of the most significant parts of our being. So I say look for all three. I think you can, if you are aware of yourself and your life, you can find messages in all three. If you have a stellium in another sign that is not your sun, moon, or ascendant sign, that might be pulled in that direction. And so look for the message coming through the stellium area of your chart. But the stellium shouldn't include the outer planets. Those are impersonal or transpersonal collective planets, and they don't really affect us deeply personally unless they're on top of a planet that we are that's transiting, or that is being transited by them. Right, let's get back to Aries. So Aries, this Jupiter squaring Saturn is coming from your 3rd house to your 12th house. And so there's quite a lot of thinking about what you want in life in terms of a bigger picture that might include aspects of your spiritual life. The Jupiter in the 3rd house will have had you very busy, and that was when Jupiter ingressed at the end of May of 2024. It continues right through till the 9th of June, but this square is very active now here in December. And what plans you may have had, or what the feeling of kind of plowing through and using your willpower to get things done, or the short-term aims and the goals that you had aspired to, may not be really working out for you. And there may be something with that Saturn in the 12th house, where it's been since March 2023. There may be something that you're recognizing about what we call self-undoing, where there's something you realize is your own situation. Either it's an unconscious thing that maybe holds you back, that can be a pattern that runs in the family, for example, a pattern of expectation around failure, potentially. This will depend on your chart, obviously, but expectations around or a fear of lack, for example, that can have you sabotaging your own success, potentially, and sabotaging your plans. And what can happen here then is there can be this feeling of frantically grasping at straws. And when Jupiter goes through the 3rd house, especially in low dignity, as it's in the sign opposite the one it rules, and that's the Jupiter that's ruling Saturn, there can be some mistakes made. There can be some things where you realize, well, actually, I shouldn't have bothered with that, or I shouldn't have said that thing. 3rd house is also how you communicate. And now I wish that I could backtrack, or I need to backtrack, and I need to recover the lost territory. And so there's something here that is a healthy slowing down in the space of what you hope to achieve in a short term. That also has to do with perhaps the the capacity for connecting with your family. This is also the house of your extended relatives, your siblings as well. This might be with reference to a sibling, potentially especially younger siblings, and their experience, or it's maybe something because of siblings that you have to deal with, and that is slowing you down. So again, don't despair. The slowing down is good. It's a necessary phase, and it's not a no. Saturn is never bringing us a total no unless it's genuinely inappropriate, and therefore you should be very happy that you're hearing the no. But Saturn says, have you done it correctly? Have you rethought this? The Saturn going through the 12th can also be where there's some unconscious aspects of life that we become aware of. Now Saturn is going back through territory that it was in April. Even in March, you would have experienced this. So whatever was going on in April is also giving you a flavor of what needs to be resolved and what needs to be taken care of. And from the point of view of Jupiter, what was going on in July and August is what you're reviewing now. So we could say it's basically those months, the months of the middle months of the year that were highly activated both by Saturn and Jupiter. And so now you're looking at this in a new way where as you prepare for Jupiter to station and move direct from the 4th of February, so it's just 6 weeks or so away, you're now looking at what you can get ready, how you can get back in the saddle and get ready for that time that things will start to really take shape again based on what you have revised or what you need to revise or what you recognize was not really worth your time in the first place. The third house is also teaching. And since Mercury is also opposite that in the 9th house, which is also teaching, it's higher education, learning and understanding higher principles of life, including your own sense of life purpose. That can be some of the topics that you're dealing with here, especially as Pluto is moving into your 11th. And you've got Mars moving through your 5th house of intelligence, and that also has to do with learning and students. And so there might be something here that has to do with either a project that you have to teach or a project that you are working through to learn from somebody. And that is a cause of delay or disruption, or there's some maybe even second thoughts around, am I doing the right thing? Am I teaching the right thing? Am I doing it in the right way? Am I studying it in the right way? And these are the things that you can reflect on. So Mercury was retrograding through this part of the chart in the last few weeks. And so from late November until mid-December, Mercury has already gone through some of those questions. And now Jupiter is going to move along into the longer term perspective and what will bring you more benefit. So it's a time where you can draw on your spiritual reserves as well, where you can really understand that Saturn principle in the 12th house that gives you a deeper connection, maybe more serious connection to what you believe, and understanding also what you need to change, maybe in the sense of how you take care of your health. The 12th and 6th houses are with reference to health issues as well. So there may be something that you realize you need to reestablish to get a better grip on things, better health. If there is something to do with foreign lands, this can involve travel, but the travel may not work out exactly as you planned as Jupiter is retrograde. Or it might be that the travel is going back to doing something you've already done. And that can, again, if you go back again through March to July, August, you'll get a feeling for what that might have been. And you're having to revise that or go back through this channel of travel and issues that you needed to deal with around travel. What else could that be now? So the third house also, of course, is about your communication. And so there might be something here that you recognize needs to be thought out in a different way. The third house represents your short-term plans and goals and how you use your courage and your strength of conviction. And while Jupiter is not in good dignity and retrograde, you might need to reflect on whether you're pushing against a closed door, or are you even taking action in a way that's going to bring you benefit? Is this something that you can maybe reflect on and learn from, based on especially what was going on through the middle of 2024? And as Jupiter moves forward from this point, and then Saturn, of course, moves forward, you're going to get a major shift. So, what you're bringing through this Jupiter square Saturn, you will then apply yourself as Saturn and Neptune enter into your first house. And that will be a process that starts on the 30th of March with Neptune moving into your first house and Saturn then moving in on the 25th of May. So by the 9th of June, Jupiter moves into your fourth house and squares that Saturn one last time as part of this cycle. And now you're looking at something very different. Now you're looking at yourself and how you take action, what you need out of life. And that Jupiter moving into the fourth house is about feeling security. What brings me security? And Jupiter is going to be in very strong dignity. And that means that if you do what is right for you and you take the right actions, you work with the right goals, and you maybe say the right things, learn the right things, teach the right things with that Jupiter in the third, take care of your siblings and allow yourself perhaps to be taken care of as well by siblings. All of that will bring its fruits to you when the shift comes, let's say, ongoingly between, let's say, April and June of 2025. So that's it for Aries. I think that's a pretty good place to start, where you can look forward to 6 months from now and see how this square will pan out for you. And best wishes with that. So Taurus, we have the Jupiter squaring Saturn from your second to 11th house, and these are money houses for you. So that's also very much a part of the significators for Taurus. It's financial security and security of all kinds, being in a place of comfort from a psychological as well as a material place is very important. With Jupiter in the second house, this often becomes easier, except that Jupiter's not in strong dignity in your second house. It does rule the 11th house, so gains can be there for you, except that Saturn is there. And sometimes Saturn can block that. And when Jupiter is squaring Saturn, it can feel like the gains are indeed blocked. So things have not necessarily panned out the way that you wanted them to. Maybe you invested, or you were planning to invest, or maybe you have a lot of expenses and you didn't expect that, and you were hoping to receive money or hoping to have some kind of gains or accolades from what you do, or from coming from friends or other places, and that seems not to necessarily be available as well. So don't despair. This is a temporary setback, or it's a temporary way of reestablishing what's important here or what needs to be changed. And with Jupiter retrograding in your second house, it's an opportunity for you to assess your spending. Are you spending on the right thing? And are you taking care of things in a way that feels like it's going to bring you better things going forward? Because remember, you're going to have Saturn squaring Jupiter one last time, and that will be the middle of June. As of the 15th of June, they'll do their last square in this cycle. And so you're looking at something that has a lot to do with this tension between what you feel is bringing you security and otherwise. But it can also be, if there is some kind of fear of lack that happens, that can be the case for some Taurus, sun, moon, or rising. If there is any fear of lack, then you want to practice generosity and gratitude. So that actually sounds paradoxical, but when you feel that you haven't got anything, you need to give. You have to be generous. And you find that in the giving you receive. And this is ancient spiritual wisdom from every tradition. And often you find, if you travel around the world, that the most generous people are those who have very, very few resources. But their generosity comes from a different place. It comes from the heart, really. And often when you go to so-called rich countries, or really so-called advanced countries, you find people incredibly ungenerous and stingy and suspicious, because they're so attached to what they already have. And so if there is this issue around lack, or any fear of lack, or anything that seems to be called in terms of a feeling of disappointment, like this should have happened, I should have received that, that should have, woulda, coulda, shoulda, maybe anything that relates to a feeling of entitlement is a good opportunity now with the Jupiter retrograding, squaring Saturn, to reflect on. Saturn also is about your future vision. And it's not so much that it's blocking your future vision, especially by transit. That's rarely the case unless this is your Saturn return. phase. But if the 11th house has a Saturn in it, it is usually an opportunity for you to get clear on your future and really have a sense of this is what is important for me going forward in the long vision that I have for my life. And as Jupiter is in the second house, it's also speaking to your values. And so your Jupiter is ruling that 11th house, and it's bringing you a sense of what do I value? What is important? And how do I see that in the long term? That means that I need to do something to establish this longer vision, this long-term vision. And the Jupiter squaring Saturn is just coming to that place where it says, I need to understand why what I thought I wanted or what I thought I should be doing is not working for me. Jupiter is also in the house of family. Second house represents family and everything that supports you. And again, there may be something that you actually have to contribute. You have to do more. There may be something around family issues or around, anything to do with what feels like abundance. Jupiter also represents abundance, and it's in the second house. But that feeling of abundance that might be challenged at this time. It might be that there's this doubt that creeps in around, is my dream accessible to me? Do I have the personal resources to achieve my dream? And so that's something to rework and reflect on as well before we move into February, where things start to move forward. So it's a good time for a boost of morale, that you give yourself a pep talk and take care of the longer vision that can come with Saturn in the 11th house. It doesn't have to mean holding yourself back from dreams. It just means that you need to get serious about them. Equally, the 11th house represents friends and the groups of people that you spend time with. And so there might be a need for you to once again assess who is there based on my values. So all this time, since basically the end of May, Jupiter has been in your second house while Saturn has been in your 11th. So the fact that they've only come into this square in sort of August time and now again in December doesn't mean that the square wasn't already in effect. And that square represents a lot of the feeling of who's in my life and who's not, based on what we share in terms of our values. Do we have the same notion of things? Do the people that are in my life actually support me? Because that's very important, that you have a sense that the friends and people that are in your life are there, cheering you on. And if that's not the case, it's far better to narrow down your field of acquaintances and to simplify your life by assessing who's in your life and who you devote time to, because whatever is in the 11th house is also how you spend your energy. It's how you, these money houses are not just how you spend money, it's also how you spend resources of all kinds. That's your energy. And so here with Jupiter retrograding, squaring Saturn, it may be that you need to call that in and just chill for a little while, not spend any energy on much at all. So you're in a phase of introspection based on values, based on what you need or what you think you need to feel secure, financially especially, but potentially also socially. And so this can be something that gives you a vision or an idea for the next 6 months or so, especially up until the point where we get that Saturn squaring Jupiter in the middle of June 2025. Which will be the last of the squares of this whole process of Saturn squaring Jupiter, which of course it began at the conjunction where Pluto is today at the top of your chart in the 10th house. So you're anyway looking at a very long game here in this phase of your life. And the more that you can be clear about your inner needs and your inner vision, your long-term vision for life, the more that will pan out, that will pay off when Jupiter moves into your 3rd house and Saturn and Neptune move into your 12th, which will actually start to bring you into a place where you feel like now you can take action. You can feel much more enthusiasm for connection, reaching out to people, and you'll start to notice that you're actually expanding your friends groups, but it's because you've done the housekeeping to get there. And perhaps expanding your reach as well, especially if you do anything along the lines of teaching or mentoring and that kind of work, you'll be expanding your reach, but really mostly from the middle of next year on. That's it for Taurus, I think. So enjoy that, sun, moon, and rising sign. Listen for all three and read in the description box below this video why that makes sense. And of course, for Gemini, Jupiter is in your first house, and it has been since the end of May. So for some of you, it happened around your birthday time that you got a lovely gift of Gemini, Jupiter coming into Gemini, whether it's your sun, moon, or ascendant. And this, of course, has been perhaps a reflection of who you need to be or who you're becoming with reference to how you show up in the world. So Saturn is asking you to take quite seriously what you do out in the world, your social roles, as well as your professional roles, if that is the case. And there's something here that you need to put more effort into. But often when Saturn goes into the 10th house, there's a reflection on what you do and a revision. It might be a feeling like this doesn't apply anymore. So this is, again, it depends on your natal chart and the phase that Saturn itself is in. But this can also be a reflection of what you do and thinking, well, actually, I don't want to do this so much anymore. This is no longer my thing. So Jupiter, as it's going retrograde, is the gift that gives you from November right through to the early part of February, gives you an opportunity to reflect on how you want to reach out into the world, because it doesn't seem to be quite there yet. So you might have had some ideas. You would certainly, as a Gemini, have loads of ideas, but they may have been a bit impractical, or they may have been a little over optimistic. And those plans or those visions, in some way, shape, or form, may have been held back, and it can have been held back by an authority figure. Saturn in the 10th can also represent an authority figure or some outer social situation that actually slowed things down, not necessarily your change of heart, but especially because Jupiter is retrograde in your sign, it's an opportunity for you to clarify, is this still what I want? Is this still who I am? Is this what I think I should be doing? So you do have a really good I see a good chance to go back over the few months of last year, let's say, especially strong in July and August of 2024, and reflect over those times. Saturn itself is where it was in April. So late March and April, Saturn was moving through this point. And so there are things here that you can look back on that you start to notice as a pattern, or you notice as coming back for reflection. And when Jupiter then stations direct on the 4th of February, and it's going to go moving quite quickly then through your first house all the way through to the 9th of June, it's going to zoom through the first house from the 11th degree all the way to the end degree of Gemini. That's going to be an opportunity to really feel the impact of what you've changed or reassessed or planned for that may not have materialized. So you might feel frustrated, you might feel disappointed even, but whatever is coming on the horizon is going to move you forward. So Jupiter in the first house is a great opportunity for accelerated advanced growth, and especially as it rules your 10th. And Jupiter also rules your 7th, so this might relate to relationships as well, or business partnerships that also change your social status. That is, generally speaking, an improvement, as we're talking about Jupiter. And so do take this time where you now have about 6 weeks before Jupiter is going to station direct, and reflect profoundly on why things may have felt like they're stuck, or why you might be doubting the route that you want to take, or you might be doubting the vision that you had for yourself, or for your career, or for your marriage, or any of those things that are recognized socially. And be grateful that this actually, at this point, is not happening, because I think you're going to find that the results will be improved as you go forward in the weeks ahead, and especially from February onward. So you're looking at a lot of, no doubt, a feeling of frustration and even personal disappointment with Jupiter in the first, whether it's sun, moon, or ascendant. But it's all for a good cause, Gemini. And often what happens with Gemini is that there's such a happy-go-lucky attitude that you might jump in too fast into things that actually are not great for you in the long run. Saturn says, look at the long game. It's in the 10th house. It's an angular house. Jupiter's in the first house, also an angular house. And that's where you're looking at this vision for how you structure your life, how you structure the way you show up, especially out in the world. It's worth reflecting on. Jupiter in the first retrograde also can help you resolve issues around health. Jupiter in the first can show us where our self-indulgence can affect our health. And when Jupiter is retrograding, you can notice these things. You can see that that's happening. So that can also be very helpful. Although around the holiday season may be frustrating as well. So maybe that's what your Jupiter square Saturn is. You're frustrated that you can't attack the buffet the way you want to. But don't worry, because when Jupiter goes direct again, you will start to find that energy coming back for you to literally shapeshift and to perhaps find the motivation, the mojo to take good care of your health moving forward. That includes mental health, of course, especially with reference to Gemini. But that's something that you want to consider, especially as Mars, which rules your sixth house of health, is also retrograde. And it's in the house of the mind. So if there are health issues, my guess, Gemini, is that that's coming from your frame of mind, from your attitude to life, from anxieties or worries that might be there that we can really only see in your natal chart, but that may be something that is in your awareness. So I think that's it for Gemini. So it's already quite a lot. It's a big year for you anyway. And so don't despair if things feel slow. You're on your way to, a couple of months from now, you're on your way to bigger and better things based on what you've understood from the last 6 months. Enjoy that, and I'll see you in the next video. So Cancer, Sun, Moon, and Rising sign, and especially for Cancer, listen for your moon because that is your ruler. You are having Jupiter in the 12th house, which is a very mystical, spiritual house for you. That also it recalls issues of health, physical and mental, even spiritual health. And Saturn is in the 9th house of your sense of purpose, your higher purpose, or your sense of what is life all about? What's my life all about? It's also about learning and teaching. Also classically publishing or disseminating information. You could say nowadays we could call that even online podcasts or websites and things like that. So it's getting the message out there. And so with Saturn squared by this Jupiter retrograding, it's something that's being held back, and it can also have to do with long distance journeys, especially journeys that relate to work or things that are bringing you to a place of better understanding, deeper understanding, like retreats, conferences, congresses, and things like that help you learn or help you teach one way or the other. So for a 12th house Jupiter, often what happens is you get a feeling that although things are not necessarily working outwardly in the way that you want, you get a feeling that things will be okay. That is a signature of Jupiter in the 12th. There's a feeling of being protected, being cared for, being looked after. So you might have found that some of the things that didn't work out for you were actually a mixed blessing. It's like, thank God that didn't happen. Or isn't it good that it didn't happen this way, but it will happen this way? So again, it's not necessarily a no, it's a wait. It's a wait and see, revise and check again. So with Jupiter in the 12th, this can also have to do with finances, because 12th house is a house of loss, and that can be financial loss, especially because Jupiter represents abundance. And so there may be something that you need to recognize about money management. And this is true, especially because Mars is in your second, also retrograde. And Mars rules your 10th house of your career. So there may be something to do in connection with your career, or 5th house is ruled by Mars too, investments or children, that's costing you something. And you're not yet seeing the results, or you're worried that you're not going to see the results, or have you made a mistake in the way that you're managing your money? Now, this is something that will slowly come to light when Jupiter first stations direct in February, from the 4th of February, but also as Saturn picks up speed and moves towards Neptune, it will move with Neptune into your 10th house in the early and middle months of 2025. And then Jupiter on the 9th of June moves into your first house, which is rather lovely because it's exalted in Cancer. And it's going to create the third square between Saturn, this time with Neptune, and Jupiter from your 10th house to your first house. And that's going to just nudge you into a new way of seeing yourself, how you show up, how that might need to take shape. By the 15th of June, it will be this nudge in this new direction based on what you've understood already. Saturn in your ninth telling you about what is my purpose and how do I show up? Is it still aligned? Often where Saturn is where we're finding that we need to end something and start something else. And it might just be a bit of tweaking, or it might be something quite radical. And then the Jupiter moving into your first house gives you a different perspective. So where you may have been laying low or feeling like you're not really that visible, or things may not be working out, or you're losing money, or there's a struggle around maintaining a flow of income, that will turn around from February onwards. And especially as we go into 2025, into the middle of the year, and Jupiter moves into Cancer. So prepare wisely now, see where the flaws are, see where maybe there's sloppiness around spending, or maybe there's sloppiness around the way that you're taking care of your health, or maybe there's some need to revise what you think of as good health based on what you've learned in some way, shape, or form. And use that time to reflect on that. So I'm a Cancer moon and rising, and I'm really just laying low right now because I've been a month doing a massive detox. I'm trying to rid my body of heavy metals and potentially parasites as well that have been just keeping me kind of under par for a very long time. These are almost lifetime chronic issues. And I'm recognizing now that the things, including making YouTube videos, things that I had just expected I would be able to do, are just one step too far, one bridge too far. So I'm just slowing down, and I just have the faith. That's the ninth and 12th house, having the faith to know that this will sort itself out, but I have to adjust my ambitions. And this is also part of I have this natally. I have Saturn. This is part of my Saturn return, and it's also part of my Jupiter return, where I have Saturn Jupiter is in a separating square from Saturn in my chart. I'm from early 66, and if you have this, if you're born from late 65 to early 66, you also have this. So join the club. And that means that our accomplishments don't necessarily meet our ambitions, and things don't necessarily pan out. We have big visions, that's Jupiter in the 12th especially, but the reality doesn't always live up to that, or we find that it's difficult to maintain the steam, and we lose steam at a certain point, and just need to rest. So the 12th house is the house of sleep and rest and retirement and convalescing and retreat in general. So I deliberately chose this time of the year to go on retreat, but I hadn't anticipated coming back with a massive head cold and feeling lousy. So anyway, that may be your situation, or maybe your situation is more to do with your spiritual connection or with your financial connection. But either way, the resolution is there, you know it, but you have to, we do need to answer to Saturn. There's no other way. Saturn is the great teacher, the great taskmaster. Even if Jupiter is the teacher, Saturn is the ultimate teacher, because Saturn represents time and limitations in this human form. And sometimes we just have to recognize that wins over our best wishes and hopes and dreams going forward. So Cancer, I wish you all the best. Let your projects flow, and keep the hopes and the wishes and the optimism there. Just know that the timing is not right now, and that things will pick up steam in February. And that will be an absolutely extraordinary time for you. And of course, that also manifests when the nodes shift into your ninth house and starts to shake things up in that ninth house of your sense of purpose from the 11th, 12th of January. I will spend more time on that in another video, but I do wish you a great few weeks to restore yourself and to figure out what it is that needs to be revised and how you want to go forward after that. So good luck with that, Cancer, and I'll see you in the next video. Leo, this Jupiter is very happily up in your 11th house. That's a great place to have Jupiter, but it is in poor dignity and it's retrograde. So you're not quite getting the most of it at this point. You're also dealing with this Mars retrograding through your first house. So it might feel like everything was on the move, everything was going great. And then November comes along and it's just like, no, not going to do it. And at this point, you just have to kind of roll with it because Jupiter is squaring Saturn from your eighth house. And Saturn in the eighth is where you really do need to get serious about how you manage your own energy without necessarily being able to rely on other people, how you manage your resources, whether they're financial or otherwise, and even how you manage your psychology and how you feel about things. You might be feeling a bit of a low ebb at this time of the year, especially because the sun moves through your sixth house, whether that's from your sun, moon, or ascendant. It's 6 houses away in Capricorn at this time of the year, and that's a bit of a downer. It's not the nicest place to have your sun. So you might just be feeling a bit of a lack of energy or a lack of enthusiasm, where even a few weeks ago you were all fired up. But hang in there because in a few weeks' time, especially through February, you're going to find that the answers come, but they're coming from what you've understood and learned in the early part of 2024. So especially from the point of view of Saturn, Saturn was here already in late March and April of 2024. So something that you learned from that time is coming back, and you're going to be able to redo it, revise it. With reference to Jupiter, it's more where Jupiter was in July, but it also applies to the Saturn-Jupiter square that we had in August. So you can think of that time of the middle months of 2024 as having given you some precious information, some really interesting ideas, perhaps about your vision for the future, how you saw your purpose, and especially because not only is Jupiter in the 11th, but you've had the North Node in your ninth house. But at this moment, it's kind of like, well, wait a minute, is that going to work? And Saturn is asking, do I know enough? But Saturn in the eighth house is about mastery over certain aspects of knowledge, what you could call hidden knowledge and mystery school stuff or psychological stuff. Maybe you need to work harder to learn more or to feel more confident in your knowledge. But by the time Saturn leaves your eighth house, which is coming up at the end of May, you will have acquired an incredible depth of awareness, a depth of knowledge, even if that's only with reference to your own spiritual or psychological nature. And then Jupiter, as it's working its way backwards, is still reflecting on, is that in light of who I think I'm becoming and in light of who I want to become and how I want to see my life, am I taking the right steps? Am I doing the right thing? Am I hanging out with the right people? This is an important one because you've got Pluto going through the seventh as well. So Leo, this is an opportunity for you to really question the people in your life in a serious way. No need to be nasty or mean. You simply walk away or slowly back away from some relationships and recognize that those were not really in your best interest, that you need to focus a little bit more on your higher vision for life at this moment in your life. And with that higher vision, you get also more clarity around who you want to spend time with. It also applies to the notion of dreams and what you get from the vision that you hold for the future, your dreams and vision for the life that you want to lead. And so right at the moment, this might feel a little wonky, might not feel like it's something you can really sink your teeth into. And it's okay. Just hang in there, continue to hold the vision. And especially because Jupiter represents our higher values and our sense of our faith. And so this is also part of that equation. You want to really get clear the structure of your faith and how that might support you or otherwise. Also, this could have something to do with money that you earn from maybe the work that you do, especially if you are an entrepreneur, or it can be to do with money that you get from other people. So there can be gains coming from friends or people kind of unexpectedly bringing you something that brings you later on some kind of gain. It may be promised and then withdrawn or promised and then delayed in some way. It doesn't mean it's not coming. But the gains are often very personally beneficial or beneficial at the very least to your career when Jupiter moves through your 11th house. You tend to be able to get connected to the right people who want to support you, who want to bring the best out in you, They see something in you and they want to support you. That doesn't necessarily mean through lumps of money, but it means that they are offering you opportunities either to meet people and connect with the right people, or to get good just moral support that allows you to feel confident going forward. But as I say, with this retrograde square between Jupiter and Saturn, it's a time to analyze and strategize more than to reach out. So if you had a plan to start something, to launch something, to reach into community, it may not pan out. And actually, luckily in your case, it's tying in with the holiday season, which tends to be a bit of a low ebb anyway. Most people tend to kind of scale things back. There's enough on their plate when the holidays come. And so in January, you'll start to feel maybe more motivated, but certainly from the 4th of February, when Jupiter is moving along from the 11 degree point of Gemini, it's going to be moving along in a forward motion all the way through the end of your sign until the 9th of June, when it moves into your 12th. At that point, in mid-June, on the 15th, Saturn will also have moved into your 9th house, along with Neptune, and there'll be a square for the third and final time. So this is the second of 3 squares. We had the first one on the 19th of August at 19 degrees of each of these signs, and now we're having the second one at 14 degrees on the 24th of December. And we also will have one at the very beginning of Aries and the very beginning of Cancer. And that's going to change something quite dramatically too, but it's not necessarily going to delay anything, in the sense that it's a cardinal energy, and both planets are moving forward at that time. And so you're getting a motivation, and think of it as what you're planning on now, what you're reassessing now, what you're grappling with and trying to figure out, why didn't that work? Why will that work better in a different way? How to refine all of this, your hopes and visions. Once you get that in motion, it's going to nudge you into the next phase, which will be that Saturn square Jupiter in the cardinal energy. And I'll talk about that more in the weeks to come. But it will definitely propel you into something that takes you into broader horizons, let's say. And Jupiter will be in very strong dignity as well in your 12th house of faraway lands and spirit and ancestors and connection with things that are internal to you, your internal understanding. So lots of gains to be had in both senses, with Jupiter in the 11th, and then when Jupiter moves into the 12th, nudged in by a square to Saturn. So do your planning with a vision long term, and see that then it takes off when the cardinal energy really picks up in June. Right. So make the best of all of that, and you will also benefit as well when Mars moves direct back through your first house, and that's after the 18th of April. So you'll see that the sort of middle months of the year will really pick things up for you. You don't have to wait until then, but just don't get frustrated if things are not really panning out for you. Okay. Thanks, Leo. See you in the next video. And we've got Virgo on the first house, where you have Jupiter in your house of career and your vocation and the way that you show up in the world and your social status. It's a wonderful time when you have Jupiter at the top of your chart. It can be a very busy time as well. But now with Jupiter retrograding, you might be reflecting on all of these different things. You might even be reflecting on your partnerships, on the relationships that you have, as Jupiter is also ruling Saturn, which is in your 7th. Now, these are what we call the angular houses, very important. They're like the backbone of your chart. And I'm really just focusing on Jupiter and Saturn here, but also the ruler of your 10th and your ruler is in opposition, creating a T-square with Saturn. So we want to also consider what you feel, how your feelings are around this particular moment as well. What you feel, and also what makes you feel secure, what makes you feel happy, is a big part of this equation. But if we focus back in on the Jupiter retrograding into a square with Saturn, which is now direct and going through the same basic place that it was in late March and early April, you're in a phase where you're recognizing something that you thought you wanted may not be quite that, or may need to be revised in some way. You're establishing something of a long-term commitment, especially with reference to relationships. And the Jupiter at the top of your chart might be showing you where it wasn't exactly what you thought it would be. that can be, again, with reference to a career opportunity, certainly because you've got Pluto moving through your sixth house of work and everyday life and how your everyday feels to you. Potentially also with reference to illness, health and illness, especially in opposition to Mars. In your 12th, there may be some issues around illness that are actually part of the story, maybe preventing you from doing the work that you wanted to do, or preventing you from connecting in the relationship that you had wanted to. But whatever it is, it needs to also accommodate the way that you feel about things. Now, if you go back through late November into the middle of December, Mercury was retrograding in this part of the chart. So you've already done quite a lot of contemplating around that stuff. And the answers will come through the course of this week by the 27th of December at the latest. And that's your ruler, and that's why I'm emphasizing this Mercury. It's important for Virgo. And you always want to keep track of what Virgo is doing, what Mercury is doing. And so Mercury is also ruling Jupiter here. And so this dynamic of a T-square pulls in Jupiter, Saturn, and Mercury really strongly. And so this factor, the reflection factor, let's say, of your vision for your career and the hopes that you had for expansion or whatever, it may be just tinged with a little sense of disappointment, or there was an over-optimism that needs to be grounded in reality, and it may be based on a business partner or partnership or a life partner that has different requirements, or that you're wondering about all of those things. Are these the right people? Is this the right structure? Is this the right place? Is this the right career direction? Is this the right thing for me to do? So keep in mind as well that as Jupiter is retrograding, it's moving through a zone that it was already in July. So some of these things were very active for you in July. So lots of things that you're considering or reconsidering around what was already very active in the middle time of 2024. As I mentioned, Saturn itself was in this place in late March and April. So you can look at those times and see what was the challenge, what was coming up for you. And now you see that there's a deeper awareness of what that represents for you, and maybe more inclusive of what you need, or more of a recognition of what you need to feel that foundation. This might have to do with a change of residence, or where you live, or how you live, or with whom you live as well. And so this energy of Jupiter at the top of your chart is an opportunity for you to really take time to reflect. It's a 12-year cycle. When Jupiter hits the top of your chart, you're establishing a pattern for career and outer directed activity, your ambitions and your life aims and your desire to leave something behind, a legacy of some sort. It's going to establish a new pattern of 12 years. So that's not to put pressure on you, Virgo. It's just to say that this point of delay and reflection and introspection is really good for you, because it's going to help you see the long game. And the long game will take you from the next cycle when Jupiter comes back to the top of the chart. And Saturn will also be at the top of your chart, will already have gone through your 10th house. So whatever this is that you're establishing will have a long-term effect. Saturn in about 7 or 8 years will come to the top of the chart, and that will have you taking more responsibility in your career, so, or in a marriage, or in some kind of social position. So it's a really good opportunity to reflect and revise and be grateful for any delays where things have not really panned out, and also relax around that, where you can say, okay, well, things are not really going to move in my direction for the next few weeks anyway. So I'm going to use this time to reflect deeply on what I want. And that's also what Mars is helping with, equally, as Mars itself is in your 12th house. And so there may be quite a lot of reflection around your spiritual sense, or around where you realize you're doing things that are not helpful for you. They're not in your best interest. This might have to do with health, mental health, physical health, emotional health, psychological health. You're doing something that may not be in your best interest. Mars retrograding back into your 11th is going to show you something about what you see as your vision going forward. And then when Mars comes back into your 12th house from the 18th of April, you're going to have more clarity around what habits need to be changed, or what you need to do differently to achieve the thing that you want to achieve. Equally, where Saturn is going to be meeting up with Neptune later in month of March 2025. And also then with the North Node, there's going to be quite a big change in terms of your relationship energy. So take time here to think instinctively about what this slowing down feels like, what it means for you. Listen deeply, listen instinctively, because it's going to change the direction of your life, and it's going to change the way that you're relating to people and to whom you're relating. So all good, all in good time, Virgo, and I'll see you in the next video. Libra, this is happening in your ninth house. Jupiter loves being in the ninth house. It's a great spot for it. And this is very much about where your everyday life is somehow not in alignment with what you think your purpose is. Or maybe there feels like there's a health issue, or there's some kind of struggle, something to overcome, which, by the way, with Saturn in the sixth house, you're able to overcome. You're able to find your solutions through more devotion, dedication, hard work, perhaps to a commitment of something that requires your efforts. But in that square to Jupiter in the ninth, it may feel a little bit like you don't really know anymore. You thought you knew, and you don't really know anymore what it was that you wanted to do. Or there's a strong sense of it could be this, but I just don't have what it takes. And that's not true. It's just that you're maybe feeling that way. There's something that feels stuck or delayed. Something feels thwarted in some way, that it's like it was kind of on, everything was on the go, and then along comes November and it feels like nothing's really working in the way that you had expected it to. So slow down and give it some time. And certainly by no means should you blame yourself. So this is an opportunity for you to restructure, in the way of Saturn, restructure what your everyday life feels like to you. And you want to base that on what you feel is what you have faith in your higher values, your higher purpose of life, and what is the bigger picture of life. And certainly with Mars in your 11th, you're also looking at ways of focusing forward in the future. And Mars is also slowing that roll down. You're not quite there yet until Mars moves back in the 11th in April. But even then, the Jupiter-Saturn square is helping you to reconfigure something about your sense of purpose, your higher vision for yourself and your life. What is life? And what do I believe in? Jupiter is all about faith. And in the ninth house, it's very much about what you might consider God, or what represents God for you, your belief system, and that can include political belief system. So this square between Jupiter and Saturn can also have you kind of dealing with the cold hard facts, the reality on the ground. Is this, and my wishful thinking failed me. So Jupiter became retrograde in October, the 9th of October, and especially in November, and since November has been closer and closer to a square with Saturn. And that will have felt like a slowing down, not necessarily being able to see the dreams that you had hoped pan out. And so there also may be here a sense of needing to change the way that you work, or the type of job, or the actual job that you do. And again, I feel like that it's not necessarily going to be clarified until Jupiter is moving forward. Perhaps then also with Mars back in your 10th house, you're going to have much more sense of what that could be, or how that could manifest. So it's only a few weeks away. It's not a long time. So Mars will be back in your 10th on the 6th of January, and Jupiter will be moving forward from the 4th of February. And then on the 24th of February, Mars itself will, in your 10th house, will station direct and move forward again. So you're really, you're only a matter of weeks away from moving into this place that you wanted to get to. But take this time to heart and listen in and see what it is that's working for you and what's not. Because especially with Libra rising, but it also does affect Libra moon and sun, there can be a tendency to often over accommodate other people's well-being or comfort or needs at your own expense. And Saturn in the sixth house, especially with Neptune having gone through the sixth house the last 13 years or so, Saturn in the sixth house can make you see the painful reality of doing that. But Neptune in the sixth has also brought you to a place where you may have chronically overgiven and not really seen that it was what you were doing. Saturn helps you to see that, and that will be particularly strong in March into Yeah, I guess you'll see that very strongly in March. Perhaps also in February when there's this bigger emphasis on the North Node as well with Neptune. But all of this to say that you're in a very helpful slowing down phase, and that Jupiter retrograde doesn't mean things don't happen. It just means that things are not coming at you in the way that you might have thought that they were. Or even if this, for example, might have to do with a legal issue, which can be the case between the sixth and the ninth house, the results won't be clear. Or if you get results, there might be something that changes. Jupiter's ruling your sixth house, ruling that Saturn. And so if you get results and it's like, no, it's not that, there would be definitely grounds for appeal in this case, if that's something that you're contending with, or if it's something to do with higher education or a choice of education where you want to study, or something to do with even a teaching role. If you want to take on a teaching role, then this might just be where it's like everything becomes a little complicated. Suddenly things are not moving ahead. It feels like maybe things are not progressing. Mars is in the 11th retrograde, and that rules your money house. And so it might be an obstacle around income or around how you would earn at this time as well. So just take your time and know that things will shift. And especially in a few weeks' time from February onwards, you'll start to feel that things, the reflection time is paying off. That the time where you go deeper into your inner wisdom and clarify who you need to be in this phase of your life, it will make all the future choices much easier as you go forward. The final the final Jupiter square Saturn is going to happen in the cardinal signs of Aries, your seventh house, and the 10th house, where we find Cancer. And so this will occur along with Neptune. So it's a different feeling of a square. Not only is it a cardinal energy, which both planets are moving forward, and Saturn is conjoining Neptune, there's going to be a feeling of impulse, and it's going to change some dynamic in your life. It's going to change something relative to your career or your partnerships or your social status in some way, shape, or form. So what you're setting in motion now and how you're resolving whatever feels like an obstacle or a delay to you is going to pay off really, really well in the middle of June when the third and final square happens. We had a square in August, 19th of August, at 19 degrees of Pisces and Gemini. And now we're having this one at 14 degrees of both signs. And then there will be at the first degree of Aries and Cancer, there will be another square on the 15th of June. And so you're preparing for something of a longer game. Saturn is always playing the longer game. And this will have to do with your everyday life and your work and your health and how you structure yourself, how you structure your day. And so definitely take your time, take things into deep consideration, and know that your best interests are going to be served by slowing your roll and then coming forward when the timing is right. So good luck with that, Libra, and I'll see you in the next video. So for Scorpio, sun, moon, and rising sign, Jupiter is 8 houses away, so in your 8th house, and Saturn is 5 houses away from you. And Jupiter is squaring Saturn, which is ruling as well. So there's something here that might have to do with how you share money with your life partner, or how you receive money from clients, or what you feel you get support from. This can be a time where you feel like you're getting more support, but it's somehow blocked. There's something there that's not quite happening. If this is about a romantic relationship, it might feel that there's a delay around romance as well. There may be something that feels like this is possible, that all these things seem to line up, and yet it's stuck. It's not working. So you might feel frustrated at that. Your ruler Mars is at the top of your chart, retrograde as well. So that retrograde motion is also having this sense that things are not quite what you'd hoped for, especially in the house of career, social status, how you reach out into your life, how you reach out into the world, your ambitions. And so this is a time where you really want to contemplate that 8th house stuff of how do I share resources? How can I trust? That's 8th house as well. Very big message for Scorpio in general. How can I trust? And how can I live intimately? With intimacy means not just sexually, but it means emotionally and psychologically. It means to be open and vulnerable with others. The 8th house also represents family secrets. And there can be something that is being revealed, or that you're suddenly becoming aware of, something that was always there, but you're just able to see it now. You're able to notice. This can also have a flavor of psychological stuff. This is the house of the unconscious, or the psychological nature of what we're grappling with, things that we kind of know are there, but we're most often not wanting to look at. And so this is also a really great time to look at that. And because Saturn is trying to get you to restructure how you express yourself, how you show up in the world, and how you express who you are in the world. And as it's squaring Jupiter from the 8th, there may be something about your partnerships, or money that you're receiving or expecting, that is blocking that. It's frustrating that. But Saturn in the 5th can bring you fantastic long-term results in terms of how you develop something based on what you love, based on what you enjoy doing, based on what feels natural to you. And so this Jupiter in the 8th house can also just be an opportunity for you to recognize, well, I'm actually emotionally blocking myself, or I'm actually psychologically blocking myself. There may be some kind of fear here as well. We also have Mercury in your second in opposition to that, in a T-square to the Jupiter that it's ruling, and it's squaring Saturn as well that Jupiter is ruling. So there may be something here around money. And as I said in the introduction, there might be something here about a fear of lack, a fear of not having enough, a fear of where do I get my next paycheck from, or where is the income coming through. And so there's definitely something that you will learn from yourself. You're learning through yourself. And this is an opportunity for you to go deep. If this is something to do with children, this might be also an issue around marital intimacy, or around something to do with your partner, or even the sexual drive and issues around your sex life that may be affecting or being affected by the issue of children, one way or another. And that, of course, depends on your natal chart, and it depends on where you are in life as well. So what you're solving for as you're going forward, this delay, this thing that you need to take awareness of, you need to become more cognizant of, you're going to be feeling the resolution coming in February, particularly because on the 4th, Jupiter starts to move forward again. And as of the 24th of February, your ruler Mars will be moving direct from your 9th house as well. So there's a bigger story here that will have an arc of a few weeks' time, that will start to move in, again, forward motion, in a feeling of, okay, I'm now able to grapple with these things again. And the resolution will come and speed up as the months go forward from February, March into June. On the 15th of June, then Jupiter moves into your 9th house in the 1st degree of Cancer, and Saturn joins up with Neptune in the 1st degree of your 6th house of everyday life. So the Jupiter starts to become visionary in the 9th house. It's more about who am I in this moment of time, but also in the greater vision I have for my purpose in life. What is my purpose? And also it has to do with beliefs and what you have faith in. It's higher learning in general, so that can be philosophical or just educational, university type learning as well. So there may be something here where you're having to restructure your day because you want to learn more, or because you are working through even the process of teaching, because Jupiter in the 9th also represents teaching. Either way, that is going to be a qualitatively different square, because then Saturn will not only be with Neptune, but it will be in a forward motion and in a cardinal sign. So the Jupiter and Saturn moving forward in a square will feel very, very different. Just like in August, when we had the square, in August, Saturn was retrograde, then Jupiter was moving forward. Now we've got Jupiter retrograde, Saturn moving forward, but in the middle of June, when they square again, both are moving forward. I'll do another video about that, but you can rest assured that will have a more of a bump effect, a feeling of, okay, jump and do this thing now, because it's cardinal energy and both are raring to go. There's something there that becomes more apparent. Saturn is going to be with Neptune. There may be some lack of clarity around your everyday life or the structures there. I'd say it's not a major issue, because Saturn and Neptune almost in a way balance each other out. I will talk more about that in another video, because this one I want to focus on this particular square here. So good luck with all of that, and I will see you in another video. All right, sorry about that, Sag. I had to let my dog out. So here we are now for Sagittarius. So for Sagittarius, we have your ruler, Jupiter, in your seventh house, squaring Saturn from your fourth house or to your fourth house, which it also rules. So your ruler rules your first house of self, as well as your fourth house of your foundation in life and your homeland, your lineage, the people you come from, your sense of security. And Jupiter in the house of relationship and others somehow is debating. It's maybe feeling challenged. And so there's a need to resolve some kind of association or connection that you have with others in order to get to this more secure place, which Saturn is trying to work through for you ultimately until February 2026, but until it leaves temporarily your fourth house on the 25th of May, until it comes back later in 2025. So what you're contemplating here is very personal to you. It's a very important step. We've got Mercury in your first house in opposition to that Pluto, and they're in a mutual reception. They rule each other. And so what you're thinking of, how you're personally communicating, how you're personally engaging and planning and strategizing. By the way, Mercury was retrograde at this part of your chart in your first house of self through, it was moving through there much of November, retrograding at the end of November and into the 15th of December. So you've gone through this territory already in terms of contemplating things. Now the bigger question is still lingering around who's in my life and who's not, and how do I engage with people, and how do I want to connect with people. And this Mercury also ruling your 10th house, and that being the empty space of this T-square, reflects also what we need to do and where we need to take action. And so there's something here that you need to communicate about, that you need to decide. Mercury represents decisions. We have Pluto in your third house of truth. What is true for me? And Mars in opposition to that from your ninth house, which is establishing a tension between what you think is your life purpose, or what you think is your, maybe what you have faith in, or what you think is your belief system. Or connection with people who you consider to be role models or teachers. And there's a tension there. And now this is going to be decisive because Pluto is over 20 years going to completely transform your sense of your relationship to how you communicate, as well as your sense of truth, what is true for me. In terms of my truth, my living truth, but also how do I speak the truth? Do I say yes when I mean no, for example? Those are the minor sort of white lies that undermine our integrity, and they undermine our well-being and our power to manifest as well. So it's an erosion of, let's say an awareness of an erosion of self, because Jupiter is not in strong dignity when it's across from the house that it rules. And so it's giving a lot of power to other people, or maybe putting a lot of hope in other people. We're recognizing now, as Jupiter is retrograde, you're recognizing now that you must stop doing that this is something that you must grapple with, that you need to take responsibility for, so you can feel secure. This can also have something to do with changing structures in your family, because fourth house represents the family, especially the lineage, the family of origin, but your home as well. And you might be, again, contemplating moving, or there's some kind of issue around what home represents for you, and it might be based in how you relate to somebody. There may be a new relationship coming. Maybe there's already been a meeting of some connection with somebody, and that's not quite working out, or there's a delay for some reason. There's something that needs to be resolved before the relationship can really take off, or there's a reconsideration about even the person. Is it the right person for me? And so this moment of reflection, let's call it, it's a couple of months of reflection, but especially on the square here, this tension, this obstacle, this feeling of things being delayed and not really panning out. It's consider that an opportunity to really look deeply at what's not working and really see what needs to change. And you might feel initially that this is a big sacrifice, because your tendency is to be very optimistic, and your tendency is to kind of wing it and hope that things just pan out. But here, this is where reality bites, basically. This is where reality says, wait, this is about establishing something lasting for you. Saturn in the fourth house wants something quite serious and lasting. So that gives you a good foundation for us when Saturn creeps up to the top of your chart. sort of 15 years from now. You want to know that this is establishing something that won't go wobbly 15 years from now. So definitely an opportunity for you to reconsider how you might, I don't know, like it might be something along the lines of how you give yourself away in relationship, whether that's a business partnership or a life partner. And this is a great opportunity to contemplate that. Where am I underselling myself, or where am I undermining my own well-being because I'm kind of waiting for that person to resolve things, or I'm waiting for the knight in shining armor, or whatever it is. That'll depend on your natal chart, of course. Not all Sagittarius, sun, moon, and rising will have this quality, but it may be part of the story. What else? So yeah, so this period of time, as I said, will not last. It's coming up. Jupiter itself will be stationing direct on the 4th of February. So this is a phase. And so you can use this phase rather than feel discouraged, use it as a time to pull back. And it's kind of like when, since we're talking about Sagittarius, when you pull back the bow, you withdraw, you have to pull back to create the tension so that when you finally release the tension, you have something of a power behind the actual arrow that you're firing or that you're shooting off. But you also need to aim well, and that's where Saturn helps. So Saturn is helping to keep you aiming well so that you don't go wobbly. Jupiter and Gemini can kind of be all over the shop, and Saturn is helping to steady your aim, let's say, for this future vision, because Mars is going to take you into that future vision that's also feeling delayed. This sense of what I'm here for, what my purpose is. Feeling delayed, feeling like it's not really panning out. And again, don't worry, these things will slowly roll forward, because Mars itself will also station direct on the 24th of February. And then finally, there will be a third and final square between Jupiter and Saturn, and that will happen at 0 degrees in the first degree of Aries, where Saturn will ultimately meet up with Neptune. And Jupiter moves into your 8th house where Cancer is. And so that will be a qualitatively different feeling when they square, because both planets will be in direct motion and they will both be in these cardinal signs, which really starts to make things happen. The energy, it's very forward moving. It's very much about initiating something. And that will come up on the 15th of June exactly. But you're going to feel the orb of that for the weeks before and after, just like you do now. And so this moment, we've got Jupiter retrograde, Saturn direct. In August, when they were squaring at 19 degrees of these signs, Jupiter was direct and Saturn was retrograde. So we haven't really had the full throttle of the square, but creating a tension that requires an adjustment to move things forward. Here, the tension has always been a little bit like 1 step back, 2 steps forward, maybe 2 steps back, 1 step forward. And at this point, we're still at that kind of iffy stage. So just roll with it. It is your ruler, so that can feel frustrating when the sign ruler, when the ascendant ruler, or in this case the sun or moon ruler, is retrograding. It can feel like things are not really panning out or not working in the way that you'd hoped. But it also can be a very much welcome time to reflect and come within and get to a place where you understand yourself better, so that you can be in better shape when you're relating to other people. All right, Sagittarius, make the most of this time. It's an opportunity for you, I think, to establish something of a really long-term structure for your life, because these are angular houses, very important for the backbone of your life. So make the most of that, and I'll see you in the next video. Capricorn, your ruler, Saturn, is being squared by Jupiter in the 6th house, from the 6th till the 3rd. And so there's something here to do with work. You're, unsurprisingly for Capricorn, it's not all about work for you, but in this case it is. But it also can reflect on your health. And that might be the impact that work is having on your health. Or it might be the impact that your day-to-day routines are having on your health. Or there may be some legal obstacles or some kind of issue that you need to overcome, some kind of quandary around either staffing issues, or employees or colleague issues, or something to do with what you see as the day-to-day work that you want to do. Is it still relevant to you? Is this a good job for you? Certainly you've had the South Node going through your 10th house of your vocation and your ambition, your career, the legacy you want to leave, and that's definitely changed a lot over the last year and a half. And this Jupiter has been since the end of May in your sixth house. So you've had a lot of work, or at least, at the very least, a lot of focus on work, and potentially also on your health and on your everyday sort of strategy for staying kind of pulled together, whether it be health-wise or just in the structure of your day. And with Saturn in the third house, there can also have been a feeling of limitation or restriction around how you are able to express yourself. It can be limitations or restrictions around literal communication, like how you say things, and not really being able to feel comfortable or being able to express fully how you need to express yourself. Or it can also be just how you connect. And you might have felt that this last little while, and since March 2023, you've not really been connecting with people. They haven't been your people, as it were, the people in your everyday life. Maybe you don't have much contact with, or in fact, the opposite can also be true, where there's more intensity around the people in your everyday life, and there's some obstacles to overcome with that. Saturn in the third also often requires us to learn new skills. It often requires us to master issues that are related to communications, related to the dexterous, like manual skills that you have. That's also a Gemini thing, like the talents that you have. So maybe you've had to master something of that. And this is your ascendant ruler, or your sun ruler, or your moon ruler, depending on what you're listening for. And so there is something here that's quite strategic as well. So you're putting an aspect of yourself in this vision of short-term, like my short-term goals and the things that I really want to put more energy into, and you're getting serious about that. There can be something to do with your extended family as well that can represent a loss in the extended family, or a disconnection from either siblings or cousins or aunts, uncles, and so on. And that you're feeling that quite strongly. And that can change your everyday life as well. That's the Jupiter factor retrograding in the sixth. So whatever that either separation or loss may have been, that can influence the way that you feel in terms of your health, your mental health, physical health, and so on, as well as your day-to-day schedule. And so this is a moment where you're grappling with whatever is different here, whatever the difference is. The thing that needs to be changed is coming through the sixth house, where Jupiter is reflecting on things that already happened in July. And so if you go back to the month of July, 2024, you'll have a sense of where Jupiter is backtracking, and then Jupiter will continue to be roughly at this place all the way through 4th of February, when it stations direct at 11 degrees. And so this square to Saturn is really in application already through the month of December. It's been quite a long time in the making, even late November, and then continues for another couple of weeks into January. So it's not just this moment in time, but it's a phase of life where you're really recalling, looking in, trying to understand what you need to remain healthy, what you need to stay functional in your everyday life, how much work is too much, what is work worth to you? Like, is this job worth it? That might be something that you're asking yourself. Is all of this hassle worth it? When Jupiter's retrograde, when Jupiter's direct in the sixth house, it feels like it's easy breezy. You might feel that it's lots of work and lots to do, but it feels like you can accomplish things. You can get stuff done, and it feels okay. When Jupiter is retrograding, it can show you where you might be out of alignment with what's required in your everyday life, or what you might have bitten off, because that's part of the Jupiter square Saturn dynamic, which is that you might be biting off more than you can chew. So there's an aspect of yourself where you're also needing to reflect on your own choices in your everyday life. That also can include health issues. You've got Pluto moving into the second, which doesn't only represent wealth and income and that kind of thing, but it also represents what supports you, and it can affect your health overall. And so this could be an opportunity for you to really be clear what you need to remain healthy and active for a longer time in your life. Sixth house is also pets and domesticated animals. And what else is the sixth house? Yeah, people who work for you, or the colleagues you might work with, depending on the kind of job that you have or the type of way you work. So you might have some issues that come up around pets. There may be reflection on either getting one or not getting one. Don't give pets for Christmas gifts, please. You might even reflect also on the health of a pet that requires some attention, or the way that your everyday life is impacted by domesticated animals of all kinds. It might be a goat, who knows? You're a Capricorn after all. But whatever this is, it's something that will be resolved, that will find its resolution, but it's causing you some feeling of obstacle or temporary feeling of being delayed or obstructed from just getting on with your everyday life. There seems to be something that's requiring more of your attention. Saturn in the third requires willpower. It's showing you where you have that, where you have courage. And that's your ruler. Saturn rules Capricorn. And so you are showing your courage in that third house way. And so this might be something that you have to kind of grin and bear and move through in a more challenging way. But certainly you're up for it. And then when things shift in February, as Jupiter starts to move direct from the 4th, you will find that that things pick up and that there seems to be much more clarity after that. Equally, on the 24th of February, your exaltation ruler, Mars, which is moving between your 7th and 8th house, will also be stationing direct, and that will be at 17 degrees of Cancer in your opposite sign. And I'll be speaking about that later in another video. I've already given that in the annual overviews, which you can certainly buy on my website, in my shop. But anyway, to keep this thematic, let's say when Mars, your exaltation ruler, is stationing direct, and then Jupiter will be direct, and that by the 24th of February, that's going to be happening. You're going to really start to feel that things shift, things are moving in a new direction. And then also the last of 3 squares, the final square between Jupiter and Saturn, will happen on the 15th of June. So Jupiter will move into your 7th house, which is very significant for you. There will be 1 year where Jupiter's in the house opposite you at the 0 degree point on the 9th of June. And then by the 15th of June, it will be squaring Saturn, which on the 25th of May already moved into your 4th house, along with Neptune, which moved in there on the 30th of March. So that square is a cardinal square, and both of the planets will be direct. So currently we have Jupiter retrograde and Saturn direct. In the previous square, we had Saturn retrograde and Jupiter direct. Now we have both of them on the 15th of June, both of them moving direct in cardinal energy, which is square to you or opposite you, and that gives you a real boost of things moving forward. So although there's going to be tension and a requirement for adjustment, that's what a square represents, requirement for adjustment, is there is going to be some thing that's shifting, moving things forward in an impactful way to launch you in a new direction that can have something to do with housing, home, family, or partnerships, business partners, how you establish all of that. And I will certainly come back around and talk more about that in the weeks to come, because there's a lot to say about each of the squares, and otherwise we'll just be going on here for days and days. So Capricorn, make the most of this time for reflection. Ask yourself those questions about work. What are you doing? Are you doing too much? Is it the right thing for you? Is it affecting your health, and how? And be very clear what might need to change, and use your willpower and use your courage and use your skills, your everyday people skills and communication skills to help resolve this tension. And I'll see you in the next video. Aquarius, this Jupiter square Saturn is happening from your 5th house, where Jupiter is usually very happy, into your 2nd house, where we find Saturn. And so there's a lot of this tension that at the moment requires resolution between what you see as what you want to experience in yourself and how you want to show up in life, how you want to enjoy life. But there may be some tension that involves fiscal responsibility, some kind of financial something that might be a requirement, or an investment, something you need to set money aside for, or maybe the money's not there for you, or the support is not there for you in some way, or you have to offer others more support than you feel you're receiving. And so Saturn is your ruler. I work only with the traditional planets ruling the signs, and Saturn rules Aquarius. And as Saturn is your ruler, in a square there from Jupiter, which is currently ruling the Saturn, we want to pay attention because it's got something to do with you and perhaps your values and how you feel of value or not. And perhaps the Jupiter retrograding is showing you where you feel maybe you're not able to understand your true value or to work with your true value to be able to reach into that place of being happy and self-expressed. If this is with reference to children, there may be just some niggly thing that needs to be resolved around the area of children. Is something that needs to be redefined, or that they need more of your attention, or they need, or the idea of having children, perhaps conceiving children or adopting children, or something to do with you relating to children. Saturn in the house of family at this time is about getting serious about family stuff. There can be restrictions placed on you because of family stuff, possibly as well, but the Jupiter is not limiting you. It's simply delaying something, or it's requiring some more adjustment in terms of what you expect, or how that, what shape that might take, what form that takes. And so this square from Jupiter to Saturn is going to be an opportunity for you to get to clarify these things, clarify what support do I need, what support do I have to become who I want to be, or to find this place of joy and expression, creative expression, whether that's literal through having babies and children, or is it metaphorical in terms of just being who you need to be. All of this feels a little bit locked at this point. Because Jupiter rules your second house of resources, we're looking at you as a resource as well. We're looking at, your ruler in the second house of resources, where Jupiter is ruling that from the fifth house. So you have to try and really dig into, what resources do I bring to the table? I start to enumerate all the wonderful qualities that you have. Pluto is going through your first house, so you're changing your relationship to yourself. You're having to re-identify who you are, and this might be pissing some people off. We see that with the Mars in opposition to Pluto, so you might be struggling a little bit with people's conception of who you are. It's difficult, having to redefine yourself in some way. Just as an example, I'm not an Aquarius person, although I have a Venus in Aquarius, but lately I've been wanting to do more silence and be in silence and retreat a little bit more in my everyday life, and not be as social as I used to be, and genuinely try and be more in my spiritual practice and in my, just in me, basically, trying to understand myself better and understand life and so on. And that can be disturbing to some people. It can be upsetting, and it's difficult to find the way to keep constantly bowing out of things. So, bowing out of Christmas invitations, bowing out of New Year's invitations, and perhaps even other obligations that come up. And that can put people on edge. It can put people at odds with you. And this is something that you may have already experienced, because Mars and Pluto have been in opposition here since November. But it's certainly something that is part of this mix of, how do I show up? How do I make myself happy? And recognizing that there might be a need for you to re-identify with what you want out of what makes you happy, what brings me happiness. How do I touch on that creative aspect of myself, and let others go hang, basically, and figure out over these places of tension, which will come back, by the way, on the 26th of April. Try and figure out what you need in order to remain steadfast and in order to remain strong, because when Jupiter starts to move direct again through the fifth house, you're going to find that that impulse for creativity really comes back. So the month of February and onwards is going to bring you much more of a sense of forward momentum that brings you that feeling of happiness and excitement and joy. And it's all in good measure, all in good time. So nothing is denied to you necessarily. It's just that it's being delayed at this point. Now, if there's a fear of lack, if there's something that you're worried about, because Saturn is in the second house, and sometimes that can create some issues around what's available to you in terms of financial resources, or even the support of other people, feeling that you really have to go it alone. But if that's the case, you really want to turn the notion around and see where you can be more generous. Again, I mentioned this in the introduction. This can sound paradoxical, but the generosity is really the solution to the fear of lack. Giving things away, being generous, being there for others, and giving what you'd like to receive. And of course, that you need to use your discretion with that. There are givers and there are takers in this world, and so you have to separate the needy from the greedy and not give to those who just constantly take from you without at least sometimes filling your cup. But the fear of lack is an opportunity also to not only practice your generosity, but also gratitude. So be grateful for what you have, want what you already have, for example. And then you refine your vision and you refine your ideals for the future. So we've got Mercury there opposing Jupiter in a square to Saturn, and that's also part of recreating or creating a vision, which Mercury going retrograde was already doing through November and December. So this is an extension of that Mercury retrograde story that had visions, gave you visions of what you wanted to see or who you wanted in your life. But Jupiter is still asking you to mull over what you need to be happy and how you might express yourself, how you could make that sort of real for yourself. So there's an internal process that's here that might also be a process of creative development, where it's just simply that you're scaling things back so that you can, hunker down and create the thing, whatever it is, whether it's an artistic piece or the baby or the book or whatever it is that you're creating, and you just pull back to create so that when the timing is right, you're ready to run with it. There will be a third and final square between Saturn and Jupiter. Jupiter will move into your sixth house on the 9th of June at the first degree of Cancer. It will square Saturn, which moved into your third house already on the 25th of May. The Neptune will be along with Saturn. Neptune moved into your third house on the 30th of March. I'm ignoring the North Node for the moment because it's just too many things to go into this reading. So we're just focusing on the square. But of course, the North Node will also be in your second house at that point. So we've got this energy now of a cardinal square with both planets moving direct, and that will take things forward. There will definitely be a shift of energy that has to do with your working day, how you work, having to do with your goals and your aims and your sense of what's worthy of putting your attention into. And I will definitely do another video about that in the future that you can learn from. But just keep in mind that Jupiter's retrograde now squaring a direct Saturn, and in August we had a retrograde Saturn being squared by a direct Jupiter, and now both planets will be in a square in cardinal signs, moving forward, generating something new, initiative energy, and that cardinality as well as the both planets moving direct will bring some big change. So although squares imply some adjustment, that will be very different. And that will kind of be a launching pad to whatever you're setting up right now. So figure out who you are, what do you need to be happy, and then you'll bring that into your everyday life as of June. So I wish you all the best there, Aquarius, and I will see you in the next video. So Pisces, this is very relevant to you because not only is Jupiter your ruler, this is for sun, moon, and ascendant sign, but it's your ruler plus Saturn is in your sign. So Pisces are very strongly impacted by this situation with Jupiter squaring Saturn. And so with Saturn in your sign anyway, since March of 2023, you have been reshaping your vision of yourself or your sense of how you show up in the world, and maybe needing to get more serious with things, or maybe things feeling a little bit more contemplating how to be more masterful, let's say, in your life, putting more energy into the things that matter and letting go of the things that don't any longer. And then with Jupiter in your fourth house, where it's been since the end of May of 2024, there's been a lot of focus on what makes you feel secure. And especially with reference to your housing, where you live, the sense of home, what does home feel like? Perhaps your lineage as well, where you've come from, who are my people? And also the Jupiter in the fourth can literally be issues around a physical home. Where the place I live, the house needs to be renovated, or it needs to be changed, or I need to find something and I can't find the thing. So whatever this is, it's a part of this moment of tension. Just one moment, speaking of housing and responsibilities, I need to let my dog in, so just give me a second. All right, Pisces, sorry about that. Where was I? So yeah, we've got this thing about housing. So housing it's a bigger question than just the address that you have. It's also about how do I fit in to the bigger story of my lineage, or what is the context of my life? Where do I feel safe and secure? What does it feel at home? What's the qualitative feeling of home for me? And this also represents your psychological home. And so there's definitely in this moment of time for Pisces a lot of reflection on psychology and how you're configured, basically, because not only is Jupiter your ruler and then in the fourth house, which is very psychological, very much about your connection to mother, connection to emotions and your past and so on. But also you've got the South Node of the eighth, another psychological house, and then we've got Pluto, and at this moment we've got Venus also in your 12th. And so there's a lot going on that's behind the eyes, as it were, that's going on in a place that that you may not even be able to be clear about yourself. And this is a very clarifying opportunity, because whatever feels stuck, what feels like it makes no sense, or what feels like it's an intractable problem, like where am I going to live, is all going to be resolved as Jupiter stations direct after the 4th of February. And equally, as Jupiter will be moving into your 5th house, where it's going to pick up a lot of dignity. It'll be trining your sign. And when it moves into the 5th house, it's going to complete its 3rd and final square to Saturn. It will move into the 1st degree of Cancer on the 9th of June. Saturn moves into your 2nd house of earned income, as well as your belongings and your what supports you and what you need to feel supported by, how you feel you are, what resources you bring to the table, issues around your values, for example. And that will be along with Neptune. So Neptune moves into your 2nd on the 30th rather of March. Saturn moves into the 2nd house on the 25th of May. And then Jupiter moves into your 5th, squaring that on the 9th of June. But the actual date of the square, although it will already be in orb for sure, the actual date of the square is actually the 15th of June, so 1 week later. But we, like now, as we feel this all the way through December, we will be feeling that for a couple of weeks on either side of that event, so most of the month of June, effectively. So essentially what you're planning on here, what you're looking for here, what you're trying to understand is necessary for you here, is something that you're going to be able to deal with or move forward with as we get forward into June and even in February as the Jupiter is moving forward. Because both of the planets rather, will be direct, where currently we have Jupiter retrograde, Saturn in direct motion. In August at 19 degrees, we had Jupiter in direct motion squaring Saturn retrograding at 19 degrees in your 1st house. So this is a different energy when both of the planets are direct and both of them moving into cardinal energies. We'll see that in a separate video. There's a lot more to say about that. But I just want to have you keep that perspective in mind, because it's no doubt not an easy gig at the moment with Saturn in the 1st house. There's a lot of responsibility. There's a lot that needs to be changed. There's a lot that needs to be reconfigured just to show up as yourself, to be true to yourself, and to be in integrity with yourself. And then Jupiter is asking this very important question of, how do I feel about all of this? What are my feelings about that? Where do I feel secure? And how do I build that security in? Beware of overstretching. Beware of being over-optimistic, because it's precisely that over optimism or the impracticality of things that is slowed down by the square. So you can then, the square will help to show you. It's like, oh, wait, yes, I see. Now that's not going to work out. And so that's something that is a blessing. That's the mixed blessing of having Jupiter, your ruler, retrograding at this time and in an angular house. So otherwise, this will bring forth later some real benefit, because Jupiter going through the 4th is extremely helpful. Very supportive energy. It makes you feel very positive. It's just that at this particular juncture, things have really slowed down, and you're not really able to see how to work your way through it, or it feels perhaps like there's some other obstacle that might require some attention, and especially as Mars is in the 6th house. That's also that's your house of health. And then Pluto, that's in opposition to Pluto in the 12th. There's also the things that you can notice might be obstacles due to health issues, especially with Saturn in the first. It's an opportunity, a requirement of Saturn in the first to take care of health issues. And that will be taken care of for you if you don't take proactive steps to deal with that. Now, Mars is retrograding back into your fifth, and then it comes back into your sixth house as of the 18th of April. So you'll get a fresh look at that from April, how you've been doing in terms of taking care of your health. By then, Jupiter will be well on its way towards the end of your fourth house in direct motion. Yeah, that's pretty much the whole story for Pisces. It's a big deal having these angular houses affected by square. Oh, by the way, the Mercury in opposition, creating a T-square here, is in a mutual reception with that Jupiter, and it means there's an opportunity here for you to, what is going on in terms of how you rejig yourself, your happiness, your psychology, your place of living, your relationships with family, and so on. That is based on what you've been considering and trying to plan for and think about in your 10th house of career, and how you step out the front door, the things that you bring to society, the legacy that you live, the aims and ambitions that you have. So, or you could call it your vocation even. And this is also ruled by Jupiter. Of course, Mercury rules Jupiter in the fourth. So that's why it's a mutual opposition. And so if you reflect back on November and into the middle of December, well, Mercury was passing back and forth in retrograde through your 10th. You'll already know many of the things that you need to be grappling with, or what you need to understand in order to get to that 10th house place of ambition and the vision that you have for your career. So this is definitely part of that story. This is setting you up in a new foundation. It's a 12-year cycle that Jupiter brings into your fourth house. So it's a new foundation that can be quite literal. Where do I live? What's the address? Or, am I comfortable in my own skin is another one. So thanks very much for this. And I've been forgetting to say, I'm really lousy at this advertising stuff, but I've been forgetting to say that I have, of course, the astrology course coming up that begins on the 12th of January. And it's not just astrology. It is, of course, how I look at astrology and how you can refine your look at a natal chart and help people with that, or help yourself and your family with that. But it's also a personal growth opportunity. We're looking at 3 months of intense opportunities to really deeply understand our relationship to life, our relationship to ourselves, and our relationship to astrology, and how that can all come together to help others as well. So I invite you to join me there. I'll put the links below, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.